Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for this live Photoshop event. Before I get started, I definitely want to introduce myself. I am Hank Washington. I am a designer and illustrator, originally born and raised out of Mississippi, and now residing in Georgia, USA. I've been designing for roughly close to 10 years, and alongside with that, I've been illustrating also. I've been had an opportunity to work with a lot of clients, small and large, all the way from your small out of the garage companies all the way up to big Fortune 500 brands. And I've been fortunate enough to be a part of some amazing teams. But today I am creating a one some of my signature fuzzy illustrations. You guys are going to be able to see a little bit behind the process of how I go about from taking very simple shapes that you see here in Photoshop and utilizing just a texture brush just to be able to create depth and really give these a little bit of life. If you guys follow me on social media, I'm all over the place. You can find most of these illustrations like this on my Instagram, which is I am underscore Hank. But guys, just enjoy the ride. We're gonna go through the whole process of just about how I create those textures and really bring just simple shapes to life. So you can see here I have an illustration that I made. It's probably a little bit tricky to see because I have the background the same color as the body, but I kind of created this fuzzy character. Um, Using just geometric shapes, right? Just like these cylinders, circles, a little bit of line action. But we're going to utilize this color palette to really bring out those colors and really give this some depth. So let's see if I can get started here. So guys, I am going to be using a really neat brush. So let me see if I can pull this up. Um, it is the Woodland Wonderland brush set. It's a really nice set. If you guys want to check that out, it's very close to just the type of texture that I really like to use in my illustrations. Um, so let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see, I just have these different layers labeled as far as like the different body parts here. And what I just usually do is I either create um, a selection of these shapes, or I'll just create a clipping mask, and that just depends on the type of shapes. If they're a stroke, like I think the mouth here is just a stroke here, so it doesn't necessarily have like a fill or anything, and that's the case where I'll use just a clipping mask. But we'll get into that process here. Let me see if I can get started. So, just for an example, so we got our kind of a ponytail here. So we're gonna go ahead and start getting some colors. We got that selected. Let's put a layer on top of that. And I have a palette already here that I've been using, but I tend to like to stay within um, those color palettes just to keep everything cohesive. And kind of one thing I look for when I'm, looking for a color palette is make sure I have a range of colors that allow me to have highlights, allow me to have midtones, and just a little bit of shadow, just to give this some depth. So sorry for the jumping. I got this extreme zoom on. So let's see. Let's move these out the way. Yeah, and then we're just gonna lightly go ahead and start coloring the edge of this. See, this is a really nice brush. I love the texture of this. It's like very soft and easy to manage. Nothing too crazy. Okay. All right. And then I'm gonna add another color on just on top of that, just to kind of give it more of a blend here. You can see, starting to see that starting to come together. Um, so sometimes when I want to really get a shadow effect, I try to go dark as possible, but in a sense where I'm not using black. So that's kind of my rule of thumb is when I don't use just the straight color black, just to give these a little bit more of a lively feel to it when there is a, oops, I forgot to have that selected. Um, when I am creating just shadows. So because like the blacks and the whites is just so harsh of colors that you don't want to kind of overwhelm the illustration with that. So just keeping that in mind, and probably put a little bit of a backlight. Whoops, I am clicking all over the place, people. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can bring these back. Oh, I just hit it. That's all. Okay, we're good. We're good. Let me move these out the way. All right. Yep, and that's pretty much the process. So we just kind of repeat this over and over, just until we kind of get it where we're really happy with it. So I call these fuzzies just because I had an opportunity with a client. Well, I guess I can just kind of back up a little bit more. So for the longest, I just been designing just for fun. It was all this was just to get the bills paid. But I started to get back into illustration really heavy. Probably I would say close to 2 years now. Just starting to do it like more and more as a hobby, just to kind of get back in the flow of it, and really learn some new skills. And I came across kind of this style of getting texturized illustrations, and I was really influenced by some of the artists I was seeing on Instagram, which they were amazing. So people like Rhymes like Dimes, and a bunch of illustrators like Sam Spratt, really talented people, and their illustrations really used to blow my mind because they had like this very um, that this very like fine grit to them. Like they wasn't smooth, but they had enough texture to where it wasn't distracting, or it didn't take away from the pieces they were creating, but it just made them more. Uh, they gave them more of a story. Like I can understand like how this picture was really feeling as if it was like a photograph. So I wanted to kind of mimic that in some kind of way. So just exploring around and just messing with different textures, um, I kind of came across this really fine fuzzy field that I thought was really neat. Um, and then over time, as I kind of like got used to it, I ended up having an opportunity with a client who allowed me to utilize this illustration style in a project. And I was super proud of it. I was super happy. And on our initial call, the client was like, "I really love your style. They feel really fuzzy." And I was like, that's actually a really neat name. I never thought of like a way to call this style. Like people ask like, "What do you call this?" And I was like, "It's just textured. I don't know." um, but yeah, that's kind of where the inspiration came from of these uh being the fuzzy style. And after that, I just kind of wanted to take a jab of making a universe surrounding around these characters. And really, just the concept behind these are really just to remind us that we're all human, and each of us have like a very unique way that we represent ourselves, and but at the end of the day, we still all have the same types of challenges, types of features, and just things that make us all human. But each of us has the opportunity to be unique in our own way. All right, so now just kind of fine tuning a little bit of this. Again, just utilizing that texture to really give it more of like a shade. Okay. And I'm just gonna repeat this process throughout. I really love blending colors that are in tie with the background. It's super important to make sure that we're not forgetting that the background is also just as important as the subject matter that you're illustrating. So I really love the fact that color and texture plays a role in like bringing those things out. And one thing I also like to do before I even start, I know I didn't visually show it here, but I love to go ahead and establish where a light source is coming from. So ideally, these will be that the light will be coming down, like straight down, from the top here, and to the side. So we can just kind of say this is like even studio lighting, so to say. But this is just a good way to get an idea of where shadows need to be placed on illustrations. Um, yeah, and then you start to really see this starting to come to life. And then in some cases, I like to double down on some textures. So like you can see here, I kind of added like this deep purple here, but even going over it with the light blue allows it to really sit really well on top of that, but also give some more depth in regards of just where the shadows and things may sit. So you can kind of see we're making push it a little bit more. Just again, just keeping it very light. Probably put a little bit more under the eyes. And then sometimes if I feel like it's a little bit too much, I'll go back in with the color, the original color of like the base, and just go back over it, just so it kind of evens itself out, so that way we're not overwhelming our eyes with so much shadow and color here. Okay. And even then on the outside of this, just to give a little bit of light that's gonna bleed through on the sides. Just want to show a little bit of, again, just that light source that's gonna come from the edges. And maybe we even bring in some of this tan color here. There we go. Awesome. So, yeah, so there we are. All right, so now we're working on our ears. And it's super important, and I'm not the best at it at always, is making sure that we name our layers now, because that's something I struggle with early on. I still don't do it as much as I should, just to be honest, because I'm a professional, and that's what professionals do, I think. No, I'm kidding, but no, but it's definitely important. It makes it a lot easier. So sometimes I tend to take these illustrations and move them into After Effects, where I'll animate these, and if you're experiencing any kind of way with animation, you know that layer organization is huge. It can really make or break just the process of creating life with these illustrations. So that's something to keep in mind, or at least that I try to keep in mind for a lot of these. Is like if I know that I want to animate these later on, it's to make sure like the layers are properly organized or just the best way possible. And in some cases, you got to improvise, right? So there's never really just a perfect way to do it, just because it's so unpredictable of how many opportunities can come from animating. There's been times I'll even start an animation and I'm like, I don't know where this is going, and then you realize you got like 20 ideas that you just need to figure out. Um, so yeah, just kind of keep an open mind. And then in some cases, if there are layers that are like together, like you can see here in the eyes, I just tend to add a clipping mask on top of those, just because I know I want to add just something in general for both of them, so I don't have to go in and add an extra step. But again, you want to really keep this in mind, and be careful with this, because animating can get a little bit complicated. Awesome, but we are making some progress here, so we're going to go in and add a little bit of texture on our neck area here. Let's get like this deep purple first. And that's also something I like to do too. So like when I'm working on shadows, I never go directly to the darkest color that I have. I try to add layers of just kind of what I like to call steps of color that can give you like a gradual shift into from things being light to dark. So you can see this dark purple, and then coming on top with it with this kind of navy bluish, it gives a really easy shift to into that base color. So that way it's not so dramatically dark, and the point of these is not making it so vectorized. Um, in vectors you can have like this light color, and then it goes into like this very deep dark color to give shadow. But we want to show like a gradual shift in this, but obviously in a more fun and I guess whimsical way. All right, so we're gonna work on these lips here. Let's turn this opacity down just a little bit and this flow down. Just want us to give it a little bit of freedom where we can kind of gradually build up these shadows. Again, just lightly adding that in there. Go here on the inside, because our light is coming down from the top here, so we want to make sure that we keep that in mind, so we know that kind of the inside, like the upper lip of this, is going to be very can be very dark. So then even at the bottom, it's probably going to be a little bit darker. Okay. Looks like we're cooking with gas here. All right. Boom. And just like everything else, we're going to switch those colors by tapping X and just add a little bit of a highlight here. And we can push that opacity up just a little bit. It's very important to keep an eye on those opacity things. What I've learned and just some of the mistakes I've made, and some of my illustrations come out very like muddy just because I keep the opacity so low, and it doesn't like really stick really well, and I end up just making kind of like this pasty look that doesn't really sit very well. Um, and then just go in and just add a little bit of a highlight again because these lips are kind of poking out. We want to make sure we keep the light in mind so that know that there is a kind of a sheen that comes across. Um, put some more here. Let's back up just a little bit to see how that goes. That looks pretty nice. Almost like a little donut here. Yeah. All right, so we are getting there. I think one thing, and I noticed that one thing we are missing is eyebrows, actually. So I'm gonna show you guys a little bit just how those shapes are made. So what I do is I go over here, I grab my ellipse tool, make sure that the fill is off, and then we pull this blue color in, and I just keep it very simple. Like it's all just circles and shapes. So we're gonna put a circle here, and what we're gonna do is grab our selection tool, direct selection tool, and I'm gonna select this bottom stroke here, and I'm gonna delete it. Boom. And that just gives me like this little half circle here. And let's make sure this is selected. Whoops. Make sure this is selected. And let's turn this stroke up just a little bit. And we're gonna go in and make this a rounded cap. Let's make sure these are in the center of this so that way we have a little bit more control. Or it's a little bit more comfortable for me. Oops, don't want to make it that big. But yeah. And then we do it just like that. And then I just kind of go in and manipulate it. So it's not gonna be a perfect circle, but just enough to where it's um, expressive and it's what I call a Cheeto. It looks just kind of like a Cheeto puff type things. Okay, maybe shrink it just a little bit, and let's duplicate that and move this one right over here, and maybe we turn it just a little bit. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So let's group those together, and let's say that's an eyebrow or eyebrows. And just to make it simpler, because I want to make sure we're okay on time, we're just going to group those together and put a layer mask. Oh, we're going to clip, I'm sorry. We're going to clip a layer right on top of those, on top of that group there. So that way it affects both of these. And you're going to see here in a second why I call these the Cheeto eyebrows. Is because when you get done shading them, they tend to come out and look just like Cheeto puffs. All right. And then just keeping in mind of where our lighting is, we're just gonna kind of just brush into these. Make sure that inside is a little bit darker than the outside. Okay, and then add a little bit more of a highlight. Let's push this opacity up just a little bit. Turn this down. Okay. There we go. Boom. And let's add it on this side too. And we're just gonna get it on the outside here. And it's okay if it bends into the other one just a little bit. There we go. And let's up just a little bit of the darkness in the inside, just so we make sure we're really giving it some contrast. And computer shaking a little bit. All right, and that's starting to look good. So it looks like we are pretty much got our head part of our figure here just about set. So with that in mind, we know we have that. So let's go ahead and group these. So I want to make sure that we group these and I kind of have that organized. So that way it's not a lot of layers to kind of search through. Looks like we're still missing a little bit of parts here. Oops, I need to go all the way down. That's what's wrong with me. Let me see, make sure I got every part in here. Okay, there we go. Boom. Now I think we got all the, there we go. Boom. All right, so we got all that in there. So now we're gonna work on the body part. So you can't really see it here because I have it as the same color as the background, but this is kind of, it's kind of a personal thing I like to really do, just to, I love seeing like things that are hitting really start to come to life. So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and begin adding just some texture into some of these colors. And I know this is gonna look kind of confusing because you guys have not seen this illustration made or being pre-made. So just kind of ride with me just for a little bit. So all right, so I have a layer mask kind of clipped into these arms, and then we're just gonna watch we're gonna basically just watch these arms appear. So let's see. Actually, no. Let's do it individually because I realized that I have it on two different things. There we go. All right, so as you can see, I have just two little oval shapes, and again, I love to keep these simple because like all my illustrations, I like to keep simple just because it allows me to have a lot more ideas and not ponder too much on, a lot of details. I don't. I'm a huge fan of those illustrations, but I think that's something that I think holds me back in some cases where I'm, really diving into details that don't necessarily. I don't say it doesn't matter, but it doesn't matter too much to me specifically, just because of again, I try to keep these as very simple as possible. And also, there's just some great illustrators out there that just really master the art of detail that I'm just a fan of. Okay, again, just keeping the opacity kind of low. And I know it looks very weird right here, but it's gonna make a lot more sense. But we're just gonna go around the edges, just again keeping in mind of our light sources that are coming kind of from all over. So we're gonna just say this is like even studio lighting. Um, and then let's like get a little bit of the shadow because the chest area is in the front, so we're gonna add a little bit of shadow towards like the armpit and side area here. Boom, and it's starting to come together again, just for keeping the opacity so low that you can just go back over and over again, to really bring out those shadows if you need to. And even in worst case, if you have to, if you need to add like a deeper color, you can get your dark blues and really go in and you just kind of put more of an edge in there. All right, that's starting to come together. So we're gonna do the same treatment here. This is kind of for the chest area because we have a collar on top. We know that there's kind of this imaginary line here, and I know it doesn't make sense, probably just seeing it, but we're just gonna go ahead and start adding a little bit more depth in here. In chest area, just gonna add a little bit of the shadow, just lightly. Yeah, that's starting to look really good. And then let's add this deeper purple in here and do the same thing. And just keeping it very light. And switch over, and then let's just add some highlights to the edge. Boom. See how that came out of nowhere? So awesome. So what I'm gonna do is actually I'm gonna go into our collar next, but before I do that, I'm gonna duplicate it and I'm gonna turn this bottom piece into a fill. So we're gonna get rid of the stroke, and we're gonna add kind of this fill color, maybe this dark purple. So that way we kind of have a little bit of a hole, because again this is kind of a head floating. So we have a little bit of a hole here that we can kind of fill out and manipulate a little bit. So let's go ahead and add a layer mask into this. Again, not a layer mask, I'm sorry, a clipping layer into this. So again, the difference between that is some of these shapes are made out of strokes, and I can't necessarily make a like selection area out of these because it just selects just the line itself. So you won't be able to see the texture. So that's why we clip layers inside of each other in this case, to really make sure that we're able to get that texture incorporated. So all right, so let's zoom in. We just gotta shrink this brush just a little bit, and then let's just slightly go under it. Again, just keeping in mind of our lighting. And some of this we may have to erase because it's very tough to really get in there and get like a perfect shadow on these rounded edges, just because it's so curved and the lighting just comes from so many areas. Uh, yeah, it's gonna take a little bit of experimentation, but we're gonna get there, I promise. All right, so now we're just adding in here, and then maybe we can go in and add like this deeper purple, and let's start really pushing out the bottom of this. And we may have to add a little bit more shadow to the chest just to give it a little bit more of a push. Um, so never be afraid that you can't go back and add a little bit more. All right, so then let's kind of select this bluish, and you can always pick something from an area that you already drawn. So let's go ahead and put a little bit of blue under here just so we can see that edge. Edge in here. Yeah, now we're starting to really see that color come through. Okay. And we're gonna jump back in here and let's select our original kind of light purplish color. Just gonna pull that from up there. Oops. And let's go in and do I have it on the right layer? No, I don't. There we go. Let's go in and add some more shadows to this inside layer here. And I think we're gonna go ahead and switch to white just so we can start seeing the edge of this, um, just so we're not looking like we're drawing in midair or just coloring like nothing. But you can really start to see how that shadow is starting. I mean, the color is really starting to come to life. And this is kind of like a a personal thing I love to see in these illustrations when just the shapes that you put in that are invisible, and compared to the background, just start to come together using textures. Okay, adding some a little bit here on the edges just to make sure we're aware of that light. And then let's switch back to our color here. Still gonna leave the opacity just up a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect. Shrink it down just a little bit, and just gonna keep it kind of rough. Okay. Awesome. So we are almost there, y'all. We're almost there. Okay, so now let's focus on the inside of this collar. And what I'm gonna do is pick this blue color here, just kind of this dark blue color, and we're just gonna kind of have fun with it. We're just gonna put a little bit at the very, very, very top of it, just right under that collar, just to show a little bit of I guess more of a fold in there. Let me see. Let's back up just a little bit to see how this going about. It's starting to look good. Okay. And last but not least, we are going to work on the string. So we're gonna clip a layer inside of here, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna probably use a lot of our colors here. So we're just gonna kind of lightly go in and just really start to really push that color. Just want to show that this is inside of this little hole here of the neck area, and we want to acknowledge obviously that where the lighting is coming from, but we just want to make sure that this string is just not out of place. We don't want to ignore the string. All right, just getting in there. All right, and then you also can see here on the layer that I have a layer mask on the string itself. And that's just a good way for me to be able to hide it while it's kind of in this little area, because we have it as, you know, this color to make it feel like it's, you know, surrounded by this darkness, but also enough that it can, because the original, let me see if I can show you, the original string actually goes down to right here. But adding that layer mask adds like a little bit of a faint look to it, just to show that, you know, it's really getting lost inside of this little hole here. All right, so I think that is just about it. So let me hide this color so you guys can see it. Let's see, there it goes. Okay. All right, so guys, that is just about it. That is the process of how I create a few of my fuzzies. So you can see it starts from very simple colors, very simple shapes, simple colors, and just utilizing textures to really bring all this together. I hope this has been helpful. I'm glad you guys are taking this journey. Feel free to follow me. I share my work across all platforms. So I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, even on TikTok or anywhere else on Facebook. And feel free to reach out. I'm always open to hearing out either ideas or maybe potential collaborations or anything. But guys, thank you so much for taking this journey with me. And until next time, have a good one.